On this episode of the Athletic Potential Podcast, we'll be discussing warm-up routines, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Welcome to the Athletic Potential Podcast, your place to come and get answers to your athletic development questions. We cover a range of topics, all related to helping you to achieve your athletic goals so that you can experience and enjoy the athletic career that you deserve. I am your host, Dr. Mike Matthews. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Athletic Potential Podcast. We're excited for you to be here. Excited for you to take the time to come and listen and to get your questions answered. We are at, again, a fun time at Athletic Potential in the spring when season's starting and we're starting to see our athletes perform. And this past year, we did a few different things. Hopefully every year we improve and have new practices that seem to help our athletes on the field. And as of right now, we're watching a lot of our athletes go out and compete. And one of the things that we really looked at this year was a general overall improvement in strength, but not so much like maxing out their numbers, but more along the lines of getting them strong enough. And we monitored numbers, and some guys we really pushed hard to get them to certain numbers. And then other guys, we basically said, look, I think you're pretty good. I think you've hit the numbers we're looking for. Let's maintain this and maybe work on another attribute. And again, we're early in the season as of right now, but what we're seeing is better results than we saw last year. And so a lot of our guys are looking a little more athletic on the field. Their statistics are up. Now, granted, there's a lot of things that go into that, but realistically, I think the changes that we have seen so far definitely have a correlation to the approach that these players had in the weight room and working on mobility and those other things that we were able to help them out with. And so it's been fun to see these changes this year versus last year. And we're hoping for a good continued spring going forward. So, all right, today we're going to go right into a question that I receive a lot at this time of year. And it's one that I'm not sure, like there is a lot of research on this topic. None of it is exactly specific to baseball. And if you've listened to the podcast episodes in the past, you know that I talk about warm-ups, warm-up routines, the importance of them, all of those type of things. And what I want to do today is not so much rehash those details that we've already talked about, but more along the lines of maybe provide a framework, but maybe give you 3 examples. A good example, a bad example, and a straight up just downright ugly example of warm-up routines that I have seen in my clients. And so one of the things that we do here at Athletic Potential when the client comes in is we talk to them about current practices. We talk to them, hey, I need you to tell me what you do to warm up for a game. If you're going to go out and pitch, tell me what you're going to do to warm up and prepare yourself to get on the mound and pitch. And this could be softball related as well. And the answers we get are a bit astounding sometimes. And we'll cover those today. But I mean, as you imagine, I have everything from, I grab my glove, I grab a ball, and I grab a catcher, and I hop on the bump, and I start throwing. We probably could do a little better than that, right? And then there's other examples like, I start with my bands and I start some stretches and then I run for 20 minutes and then I do some foam rolling and by the time we're done, I'm going, was the game over by then? It was like really long. But in all jest aside, there are good routines and there are bad routines and there are ugly routines. And I wanted to cover that today on this episode. So let's jump right into this. So a good routine, we'll start there because I feel like if you've listened to the podcast in the past, you've heard me say this before. We use a very similar routine structure for each one of our clients. And it's not so much that they have to do very specific exercises. They have to go through a very specific pattern, a pattern of, I call it a plan, a structure, an algorithm. It doesn't matter, but realistically, they have categories that they have to hit in every part of their warm-up. And the timing can range from 5 minutes to we really don't recommend anything longer than about 25 to 30 minutes. And so let me put it this way. We always recommend everybody, all of our clients, have some sort of self-myofascial release or some sort of soft tissue work at the very, very beginning of anything they do. This can be done with a lacrosse ball. This can be done with a AccuMobile ball. This can be done with a foam roller. This can be done with a Theragun. This can be done with massage, like somebody else doing it, if you have access to a trainer or something like that. All of that is available, okay, and would fall into this category. The main thing I tell them is you get 5 minutes to figure out what it is that you need the most work on, and you go after it, and then maybe one more thing, but it has to be finished in 5 minutes. Once they are done with that, we go to what we call a mobilization phase. And so at this point, this may look like stretching, most likely isn't. We don't really counsel stretching before. We'll talk about that, maybe the bad and the ugly, but we do some sort of mobility work. So think rocking exercises, working on hip mobility and moving through those things, arm reaches, rotational rocking, or thoracic rotations, open books. Go to the YouTube channel, Athletic Potential YouTube channel, and if you search rocking or rotations, you're more than likely going to come up with some sort of mobility drill. Okay, that's what happens next. It's around 5 to 7 minutes. Once they are done with the mobility, then they are to go into an activation phase. Activation means we're just turning muscles on of key muscle groups. The mandatories you have to hit are abs, so something anterior core. Okay, it's usually like a curl up. You can search that on the YouTube, and then usually a side plank. Usually a hip thruster, a glute bridge, whatever you want to call it. Bird dog usually involved in with this. And there's a couple other, those are the mandatories. And notice I didn't say anything about shoulder. We'll get to that in a minute. But those are the mandatories with activation. Just activation. Doesn't have to be the hip. It can be anything really. But activation. It should take 5 to 7 minutes. Okay, if you do the math now, we're like 15. By the way, remember, I think I said something that sometimes we've worked our way down to 5 minutes. This is 5 minutes to get to throwing. We work with relievers, professional relievers, that have to be ready and to throw within 5 minutes. And so we built that out for them. It's rare, but we built it out for them. Okay, so up to 5 minutes, I should say. That was activation. Then they go into some sort of a dynamic warm-up. Okay, this can be one movement. If you're going to do one movement, we recommend spiders. YouTube that. On our YouTube. And if not, it can be a whole bunch of movements, but this thing should only take 7 minutes at maximum, so up to 7 minutes. Once we're done with dynamic warm-up, then we're going to go specific warm-up. That is your shoulder band routines, those type of things, plyo ball, light tosses, whatever it looks like. That's your specific warm-up, specific activation, specific movement. We've called it a million different things. That's what happens then. And as soon as they're done with that, they are ready to go throw a ball. Okay. And that's what it takes. And that was what we consider a good warm-up routine. If it takes into consideration all those factors that we discussed, okay, as a review, soft tissue, mobility, activation, dynamic warm-up, specific movements, and then you go through it. Okay. If you take care of all those, more than likely, as long as it doesn't take 45 minutes, you're going to have a pretty good warm-up routine. Now, let me go through what we consider maybe a bad routine. And then there's ugly, which you guys will understand. Now, bad routine would be no routine. So let me get that out of the way right now. If you do no warm-up prior to throwing, I would consider that a bad routine, because there are so much you can do, even in like a 2 to 5 minute time window. If you just did a little bit, the benefits before you go throw, specifically in our cold weather climate right now, if you do just 2 to 5 minutes of just doing something to get going, you're going to see a major benefit when you go to throw. Okay, so even 2 to 5 minutes. Now that's like extremely, extremely slow. And we're talking about bad examples, right? And so a bad example would be a 2 minute warm up or no warm up. Okay, 5 minute warm up we can do, but anything less than 5 minutes, I'm kind of like, did you really warm up? Not really. And probably could have done a lot better, right? So that would be considered a bad warm-up. Another version of a bad warm-up is what I see right now at the youth level across the board, all right? Now, I'm gonna go on a rant. I apologize. Right off the bat, I walked up to a youth softball field the other day, and I was watching a team get ready to go to the practice. That all the girls did exactly this. The girls grabbed their gloves, they grabbed their face masks if they wanted them, they grabbed a ball, they all ran out to the outfield, and they started throwing. And I went, wow, there was quite literally no warm up there. And then my favorite was that when they were done throwing, basically once all the girls were there and had thrown a little bit, the coaches brought them back in, and then they started doing knees to chest and jog to center field and back, and arm stretches across the body and tricep stretches over your head and touching your toes, and even they had them on the ground trying to touch their toes or reach out to the side and then to the other side. Look, I'm not knocking on anybody who's trying to do their best, okay? I'm talking about bad routines. And I say I'm going to go on a rant because, one, the person that was doing it, unfortunately, I know and should have known better, but the idea is this. That has been traditionally the warm-up, and we need to change it. And all you got to do is this. Once girls get there, you tell your girls they have to be, or boys, doesn't matter. Hey, practice starts at this time. At that exact time, say it's 5 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, we are starting warm-ups, okay? Now, I tell the girls, look, so I coach my 11-year-old softball team, and those girls, what I've been trying to have them do is show up at exact time, but they're not supposed to go throw before that. They do still, because we're still working on it. We just started, okay? But they're not supposed to go throw before that. They're supposed to do, come get ready and have everything ready to go so that right at start time, you start your warm-up. Our warm-up is quite simple, okay? And I won't go through it, but it is quite literally 7 minutes total, because we're talking about 12U players here. I don't think it needs to be extensive, okay? If it's really cold, then maybe I'll add some time to it. But you always do all those activities I just said before you start throwing. And what we see in youth players a lot of times is they show up, they throw, and then they come in and do some body movements and everything else. It's so backwards, guys. It's so backwards. And I get logistically it's just easy, but the problem with easy is easy doesn't mean good, right? So bad would be you throw and then do your warm-up. I don't consider that a warm-up anymore because you just threw. At that point, you might as well go to the next phase of the practice, okay? So that would be a bad warm-up. Another bad warm-up is, hey, everybody get in a circle. We're going to pull our arms across our chests. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10, 10 with another exercise, 10 reaching to the ground. Okay, everybody, run to center field, come back. Okay, throw. In my opinion, if you add the run, it becomes less bad, okay? But if you just did the stretches and then say, hey, let's throw, if you look at some of the research data that's out there, you just actually increased the risk of an injury to your players. Static stretching, just hold, stretch, followed by a ballistic, powerful activity like throwing, is actually been found in the research to not only to do two things. One, increase the likelihood of some sort of muscle strain or joint problem. I'll just say that. It's not that, but it's close to that. Or two, you actually decrease performance. So you actually decrease their ability to throw well. So neither one is good, right? So that would be considered a bad routine. Don't just stretch and do all those kind of things and then straight to throwing. You need to do something active, okay? Go back to the framework we talked about at the beginning of this episode, and you'll see where this all comes into play. After mobility, we do activation, then a dynamic warm-up, then a specific, okay? These are the optimal ways that we have found. Now, that's a bad routine. Another bad routine would be run to center field, come back, start throwing. You can do a little bit more than that, okay? A little bit more than a sprint to center field will get you a tremendous amount of benefit. So I would consider just a run to center and back is not, it's not a good routine. It's a bad routine, okay? Now, let's talk about ugly routines. We touched base a little bit on this, okay? Let me put it this way. This is something I've seen, and I'm not trying to go on a rant or anything like that, but realistically, this is something I've seen that I think somebody, if you see this, it probably just needs to stop, okay? And that is, okay, today we're going to warm up. Everyone's going to do 30 push-ups. Everyone's going to do 30 sit-ups. Everyone's going to do 30 squats, and then you're going to go out and let's throw, right? It's not a good idea. One, you took complex movements that most, depending on your athletes, may not be able to do very well. You did them a higher volume. Now you're introducing fatigue. Yeah, their core body temperature is up, correct. But that is about the only benefit you're going to see out of that routine. You've introduced fatigue. You've taken movements. You've taken cold joints. and force stress through them. And now you're asking them to do one of the harder things they're ever going to do. And that is, resist or throw. So I'd consider that a pretty ugly routine. I see it. Unfortunately, it does happen. A lot of people are like, well, isn't that better than like a no warm up? They literally just pick up a ball and start throwing. And the answer to me is no, that's worse, because look at what happens when kids go out, grab a ball and start throwing. How far do they throw in those first couple of throws? Not very far. How hard do they throw? Not very hard, right? But if you have them do all these extra exercises before they go out and throw, now you've introduced fatigue and then didn't do anything to prepare the body outside of doing some exercise to perform the throwing motion. You've weakened it, okay? You've weakened it. The only thing that I think would make it worse, and I haven't seen this, so this is hypothetical, is if you did the push-ups and the sit-ups and all these kind of things and just fatigue the crap out of these kids, got them up, had them stretch, and then had them go throw. That'd be ugly, okay? So those are some routine examples that we see. Now, I guarantee everybody's seen different routines. I guarantee everybody has seen those good and those bads and those uglies. Look, in the end, a 5-minute routine it can be a good routine. If you're dealing with youth athletes, don't make these long and complicated, okay? Make them fairly brief, 7 to 10 minutes, but make it so that they have to focus. This is the one benefit that I don't think coaches take the advantage of, and that is they don't use a warm-up as a way to focus up their players. It happens at the collegiate level. Hard to say if it happens at the professional level. It probably does, but those guys are professionals, and those girls are professionals. They get it. They're doing it for the right reasons. They get it, okay? It happens at the collegiate level. It helps, okay? It brings them all together, but they start focusing up a little bit better. High school level absolutely can help. Absolutely can help, okay? Especially if your captains lead it and not the coaches, okay? At the youth level, it has tremendous benefits. Tremendous. I coach at the youth level. I have friends that coach at the youth level that are way better coaches than I am, and they have incorporated this. And what happens is that you take a 10 to 15 minute window of opportunity, get their bodies ready, get their minds right, and the output following that, and we're talking specific to throwing, the output following that becomes tremendously better. Tremendously better. It sets the tone for the rest of the practice, sets the tone for the game, okay? Good coaches do this instinctively. They just see it. They know that their players are performing at a higher level simply because they got a good start, okay? So if you're not doing that, you need to look at the warm-up as an opportunity to focus their brains as well as to prepare their bodies, okay? So, but yeah, this is a question I get all the time. I didn't even quote a question because of how often I get it, and that is, what's a good routine? What's a good warm-up? What should I have our players do to warm up? What's the best warm-up routine for a pitcher? What's the best warm-up routine for a catcher? Let me just tell you this, and I just had a collegiate level baseball, D1 collegiate level baseball pitcher in here, and he's coming back off of surgery, Tommy John, and he's just about ready to start his throwing progression and his rehabilitation. And I specifically talked to him. He asked me a question about warm-up, and I said, look, here's the deal with the warm-up. Whatever it is, it needs to be the same. Your job over the next 4 weeks once you start throwing, okay, is to develop the routine. You don't have to get it right the first time, okay? But you got to develop the routine. Once you have developed a routine, your job is to tweak the routine so that it's optimized for you. And then you're to maintain and always do the routine regardless of where you're at. The routine is the best thing you can do to prepare to pitch in an environment where you're not used to being, right? So in his case, it would be if he was playing in another stadium. If he's not playing in his home stadium, he's playing somewhere else, the routine is the same. They have bullpens, they have mounds, they have outfield grass, all of which that you build your routine around. If you do those things there, your brain and your mental game becomes stronger because nothing is changed because everything's the same on the field. Okay. It just allows for everybody to focus up and take care of business where they need to. On the youth aspect of this, you're playing on different fields, depending on if you're playing tournaments and traveling, you're playing on the same field. Doesn't matter. Develop a routine for your team. Okay. It helps tremendously. I'll be honest, I haven't done extensive research on whether or not warm-ups work, but we do know warm-ups work to improve performance. in regards to the mental side, I don't know if they've done that. I can tell you right now, anecdotally, from what I've seen, it absolutely helps. So use routines, establish a routine, use the framework I gave you in the beginning. Don't do the bad routines. Avoid the ugly routines at all possible costs, okay? If you're a parent and you see it, find a way to broach it to the coaches. Find a way to, maybe even at that point, if they're just going to do that, counsel with your athlete what they should be doing. But realistically, know a good routine. Understand what a bad and an ugly routine look like. Come up with a good routine. You're going to see the benefits mentally and physically when your player, or you, if you are the player, go out to perform. Do it, and you'll be very happy with results. So, all right, everybody, I appreciate you guys tuning in to the Athletic Potential Podcast. I appreciate everybody taking the time to listen. If you do have questions for the podcast, there's a link below. Please see that, click the link, and ask your question. We definitely want to answer any questions you may have, because we want to get good information out there. I appreciate you taking the time. Hey, and until next time, thank you. Hey everybody, I just want to say thank you for listening to the Athletic Potential Podcast. If you do have questions for the podcast, please visit the website, www.athletic-potential.com/podcast. You'll find a button there to ask your question. Please input your information and your question, and we will answer any and all questions we get. And thank you again for listening. If you do get a chance, please rate and review the podcast. And until next time, thanks.